The silence rarely arrives like a fight. It doesn't kick the door in. It doesn't announce itself with shouting or slammed drawers or dramatic last words. It comes the way fog comes in quietly, patiently, until one day you look up and realize you're standing in a different world. It starts small. 3 messages that don't get answered. A call that goes to voicemail and stays there. A busy day that turns into 2 days, then a week. The little signals you used to rely on the quick check-in, the on my way, the dumb joke in the afternoon begin to vanish. Not with cruelty, with absence. And absence, when it's consistent, becomes a kind of message. You refresh the app like your thumb can force reality to change. You look for the green dot, the typing bubble, anything that proves you still exist in his mental universe. But there's nothing, just the pale glow of a screen that doesn't know your name anymore. People call it ghosting, like it's a trend, like it's casual, like it's just modern dating. But what you're describing, what this feels like, often isn't casual at all. It's a quiet evacuation. And if you're a man listening to this, I want you to hear this without defensiveness. A lot of men don't walk away because they don't care. They walk away because caring activates something in them that they were never taught how to carry. They don't leave because love is weak. They leave because love asks for skills they were never given. And the shame of not having those skills feels unbearable. That doesn't excuse the damage, but it explains the mechanics. Because for many men, the disappearance isn't a decision made on a clean morning with coffee and clarity. It's not, I'm going to hurt her. It's not even, I'm done. It's a nervous system making a choice before the mind has language for it. The first time you ask him a real question about his past, his fears, his family, the parts of him that don't fit neatly into success and competence, you might see it in his body before you see it in his words. His jaw tightens, his eyes shift away. He gets joking, busy, practical. He answers the question around the edges. He changes the subject. He finds an errand. Because a lot of men learned early that emotions are not something you share. There's something you survive. Some men grew up in homes where tenderness wasn't dangerous, but it was absent. No one was cruel. No one was warm either. Feelings weren't attacked, they were ignored. You learned to keep the house running, keep your grades up, keep your posture steady. You learned to be low maintenance, to never need too much. And if you did need something, if you cried, if you got overwhelmed, if you admitted you were scared, maybe you were met with a blank stare, a lecture, or the classic, you'll be fine. Other men grew up in homes where vulnerability was punished, not necessarily with fists, sometimes with ridicule, sometimes with humiliation, sometimes with withdrawal. The lesson was the same. The moment you show your soft parts, you lose status, you lose safety, you become a target, so you adapted. You became the guy who doesn't need, the guy who handles it, the guy who solves problems, pays bills, takes hits, keeps moving. You learn to trade emotional honesty for competence, and competence got you praise. Competence got you respect. Competence got you a sense of control. But then you met someone who didn't just want your competence. She wanted you, not the performance, not the mask, not the curated version of you that can function under pressure and crack jokes at dinner and keep things smooth. She wanted the part of you that feels, the part you've been keeping locked away. And that's where the trouble starts. Because intimacy isn't just closeness. Intimacy is exposure. It's being seen without armor. It's letting someone witness your confusion, your insecurity, your contradictions, your tenderness, your need. And if you were trained to equate exposure with danger, your body reacts to intimacy the same way it reacts to a threat. You don't have to believe that to live it. You can be a good man, a loyal man, a hardworking man, a man who truly cares, and still feel your chest tighten when the relationship turns from fun to real, from chemistry to commitment, from we're hanging out to we're building something. So you start regulating yourself the only way you know how. Distance. First, you reply slower. It's subtle enough that you can pretend it's nothing. You tell yourself you're busy, you're tired, you've got a lot going on. You turn your phone face down more often. You let the day pass without checking in, and then you rationalize it as independence. Then you cancel plans, not dramatically, just something came up. You reschedule, then you reschedule again. You stay vague. Vague feels safe. You throw yourself into routines that give you control. Work, the gym, long drives, projects, anything measurable. Anything with a clear input and output. Because feelings don't come with instructions. In your whole life, you've been praised for mastering what can be mastered. And then, at some point, the relationship asks for a conversation you don't know how to have. What are we? Where is this going? Why do you shut down when I get emotional? Why do you pull away when things are good? Can you let me in? Those questions sound like normal intimacy to someone who grew up with emotional language. To someone trained in emotional silence, they can feel like an interrogation, like a trap, like a test you're destined to fail. Not because you don't love her, because you don't know how to stay present when love requires presence. So you vanish, not with anger, not with betrayal, with avoidance, with a disappearing act that feels, to you, like escape, and to her, like a demolition. Here's the part people miss. The woman left behind doesn't just lose the man. She loses her nervous system's trust in connection. Because when someone disappears without explanation, the brain doesn't file it as breakup. It files it as danger. It searches relentlessly for the cause. It replays every moment like surveillance footage. It reviews tone, timing, phrasing, facial expressions, trying to locate the mistake that triggered the abandonment. And if there's no closure, the mind creates its own. Maybe I was too much. Maybe I asked too many questions. Maybe I loved too openly. Maybe I made him feel trapped. Maybe I'm not worth staying for. That's how absence turns into self-blame. And men who vanish often tell themselves a story. Too, one that lets them avoid the grief of what they're doing. I didn't want to hurt her. She'll be better off without me. I can't give her what she wants. I'm not relationship material. This is just how I am. These sound like humility, but a lot of the time they're shame in a respectable suit. Because if you admit the truth, if you admit, I'm scared, I don't know how to communicate, I'm overwhelmed, I'm afraid I'll disappoint you, I feel like I'm failing, then you have to face the one thing you've avoided your whole life. You have to face that you are human, not a machine. And for men trained to survive by being unbreakable, being human can feel like breaking. So let's say this clearly for the men in the room. You don't disappear because you're evil, but disappearing still harms people. And it also harms you, because every time you run, you reinforce the belief that closeness is unsafe. You train your mind and body to associate intimacy with panic and relief with withdrawal. You strengthen the habit. You deepen the groove. Then later, when the relationship is gone and the house is quiet and the distractions stop working, something creeps in. It might not show up as sadness, because a lot of men were never allowed sadness. It shows up as restlessness, irritability, numbness, the urge to stay busy, the feeling that you can't settle. And underneath that is loneliness, not the I need more people around kind of loneliness, the loneliest kind, the feeling that no one truly knows you, and you wouldn't know how to let them even if they wanted to. You can have friends, coworkers, family, a full calendar, and still feel alone because everything is surface level. Jokes, sports, work, advice, banter, no depth, no confession, no place to put the weight. A lot of men don't realize how heavy they are until they finally stop moving. Now, I want to talk to the person who got left behind because you're carrying a particular kind of pain. When someone disappears, you don't just grieve the relationship, you grieve your own dignity. You grieve the version of yourself who believed communication was basic. You grieve the trust you offered. You grieve the hours you spent showing up, being patient, being open. You grieve the future you started to picture. You grieve the part of you that still wants to make sense of it, because sense would mean control. And the hardest part is this: you can understand the psychology and still be hurt by the behavior. Understanding is not the same as excusing. It is possible for his disappearing act to come from a wound and still be wrong. It is possible for him to be scared and still be responsible. It is possible for him to have trauma and still owe basic decency. A lot of people get trapped in a loop where empathy becomes self-abandonment. They learn his story. They name his attachment style. They read about emotional suppression. They start interpreting his absence like it's a puzzle they can solve. But you can't heal someone by accepting harm. You can't love someone into emotional maturity. You can't be so understanding that you erase your own needs. So here's a sharper truth. If he disappears when the relationship requires honesty, that's information. Not about your worth, about his capacity. And capacity matters. Love without capacity becomes chaos. Chemistry without communication becomes confusion. Potential without behavior becomes a fantasy. If you're a man listening and you recognize yourself in this pattern, I'm not here to shame you. I'm here to confront you with respect, because the strongest thing a man can do is not disappear. The strongest thing a man can do is stay present when he's uncomfortable, not stay in a relationship that's wrong for him, not tolerate disrespect, not abandon his boundaries. Stay present as in communicate. Stay present as in tell the truth before you vanish. Stay present as in let your nervous system learn that closeness is not a fire you have to run from. That takes courage, real courage. Not the cinematic kind where you look cool, the private kind where you look messy. So what does that look like in practice? It looks like replacing disappearance with a sentence. Not a perfect sentence, not a poetic one, a real one. I'm feeling overwhelmed and I don't know why. I'm scared of getting closer. I need time to process, but I'm not leaving. I don't have the words yet, but I want to try. I'm shutting down. I can feel it happening. I care about you. I'm struggling with intimacy. I'm not ready for what you want, and you deserve honesty. Most men don't say these things because they think they have to show up already healed, already confident, already certain. But connection doesn't require perfection. It requires responsibility. Responsibility is, I won't make you guess where I stand. Responsibility is, I won't punish you with silence because I'm afraid. Responsibility is, I won't outsource my emotional work to your anxiety. Now, if you're the person left behind, your responsibility is different. Your responsibility is to stop auditioning for someone's presence. Your responsibility is to stop translating disrespect In 2, he's just wounded. Your responsibility is to stop negotiating with someone's absence, because absence is already a choice. Not always a malicious choice, but a choice. And if someone's pattern is that they remove themselves when intimacy asks for maturity, you have to take that seriously. Not as a tragedy you can fix, but as a boundary you must respect for your own sanity. You don't need to send 10 more messages to earn a reply. You don't need to write the perfect paragraph that finally makes him understand. You don't need to prove you're safe enough for him to stay. If he can't communicate, you can't communicate for him. Here's what healing looks like when you're the one left behind. You stop treating closure like something he grants you. Closure is not a gift he hands back when he feels ready. Closure is a structure you build when you stop waiting. You take your power back by refusing to participate in a dynamic where you are always the one reaching, explaining and forgiving while he avoids, disappears and returns only when it's convenient. You tell the truth to yourself, this hurt me. You stop minimizing it. It wasn't that bad. You stop romanticizing it. He's just scared. You stop personalizing it. It must be me. And you grieve properly, not performatively, not with dramatic posts, privately, honestly. Grief is how the body releases the fantasy. You also rebuild your standards around behavior, not words. Because men who vanish sometimes return with words, apologies, explanations, promises, a sudden wave of attention that feels like rain after drought. But if the pattern returns the next time intimacy asks for depth, you're not in a relationship. You're in a cycle. A cycle is not love, it's conditioning. Now let's go deeper into why this pattern hits men so hard, because it's not just personal, it's cultural. A lot of modern masculinity was built like a bunker. Be useful, be strong, be composed, be productive, don't complain, don't need, don't beg, don't fall apart. Even the compliments men receive often reinforce emotional isolation. You're so solid, you're a rock. You're the strong one. You always have it together. Sounds good until you realize what it implies. If you are not solid, you are not lovable. If you are not strong, you are not safe. If you don't have it together, you don't belong. So men learn to manage their image, not their inner world. And then intimacy demands the one skill image management can't produce: emotional honesty. Honesty doesn't mean dumping everything. It doesn't mean making your partner your therapist. It doesn't mean turning the relationship into a daily processing session. It means you can name what's happening inside you without disappearing. It means you can tolerate being seen in an imperfect moment. It means you can take accountability without collapsing into shame. Shame is the engine behind a lot of male withdrawal. Because for many men, making a mistake doesn't feel like I did something wrong. It feels like I am wrong. And if you feel like you are wrong, the instinct is not to repair, it's to hide. That's why a man can ghost after a single emotional conversation. Not because the conversation was unreasonable, but because it triggered a shame response so intense that the simplest relief is escape. So if you're a man who wants to change this, you don't start by forcing yourself to be emotional overnight. You start by building tolerance. You train your system the way you train your body. Gradually, consistently, without theatrics. You learn to pause when you want to disappear. You learn to identify your cues: the tight chest, the irritated tone, the sudden urge to pick a fight, the temptation to just be done, the impulse to ignore messages, the urge to go cold and act like you don't care. Those are not personality traits. They're survival signals, and you can work with them. A practical step: Give yourself language templates for moments you usually vanish. Instead of silence, send, "Hey, I'm not ignoring you. I'm overwhelmed and need a day to think." Or, "I'm shutting down a bit. Can we talk tomorrow evening?" Or, "I care about this and I want to respond properly. I need some time." That's not weakness, that's leadership. Another step: build male friendships with depth. Not just buddies to watch games with, men you can tell the truth to. A lot of men fail at intimacy with women because they have no intimacy with men. No practice, no reps, no place where emotions are normal. If the only emotional closeness you ever attempt is with a romantic partner, you're trying to lift a weight you've never trained for. Start smaller. Tell a friend you've been stressed. Admit you've been lonely. Say you're struggling. Ask how he's really doing and wait for the real answer. It will feel unnatural at first. That's the point. New skills feel awkward. And if you're the person left behind and you're listening to this, trying to understand him, understanding is helpful only if it stops you from blaming yourself. It should not trap you in hope. Hope without evidence becomes self-harm of a quieter kind. The slow erosion of your confidence, your standards, your peace. So here's the line in the sand. If he wants to be with you, he needs to be capable of repair. Repair looks like he acknowledges the disappearance without you begging. He names what happened without blaming you. He makes a plan to change, not just a promise. He follows through consistently over time. He becomes someone you can trust with your heart, not just your attraction. Anything less is not repair. It's a reset button. And resets without growth are just repeats. Now, I want to speak directly to the man who has disappeared before. You may tell yourself you're sparing her. You may tell yourself you're being nice by leaving quietly. You may tell yourself conflict is worse than silence. But silence is not kindness when someone is emotionally invested. Silence is a message that says, your feelings don't deserve a response. Silence leaves someone trapped in uncertainty, and uncertainty is a form of mental captivity. It steals sleep. It steals appetite. It steals confidence. It turns their phone into a source of dread. If you don't want to be with her, say that. Clearly. If you're scared, say that. Honestly. If you don't have the capacity, say that. Respectfully. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be real. Because being real is what turns pain into something survivable. Being real gives the other person a solid ending, a reality they can grieve instead of a mystery they keep trying to solve. And to the person who is healing from being left in silence, I want you to take this in. You are not too much. Depth is not a flaw. Wanting clarity is not being needy. Asking for consistency is not controlling. Needing communication is not insecurity, it's sanity. You didn't break the relationship by wanting real intimacy. You revealed the relationship's limits. And sometimes that's the most painful gift, the truth. One day, you will notice something small and holy. You will go hours without checking his name. You will laugh without thinking of him. You will make plans without leaving space for a maybe. You will feel your nervous system soften again. Not because you erased the past, because you stopped arguing with reality. And when you stop arguing with reality, you get your energy back. You stop spending your life force trying to convince someone to be present. You start investing it in people who already are. Now, let's end with something that matters for both sides: the men who run and the people who get left behind. This pattern can change. It's not fate. It's not genetics. It's not just how men are. It's training. And training can be replaced. But it requires honesty. It requires humility. It requires practice. It requires a man to choose growth over image. And it requires the person who's been hurt to choose themselves over the fantasy of being chosen by someone who can't stay. If you're a man who has been disappearing, you're not beyond repair. But you have to stop confusing avoidance with strength. Strength is not how well you can detach. Strength is how well you can face discomfort without becoming cruel. And if you're the one who was left, you're not unlovable. You're not foolish for feeling deeply. You're not weak for needing clarity. You are human. You wanted something real. And here is the truth that stays true. Even after someone vanishes, your worth is not measured by another person's capacity to hold you. His silence is not a verdict on you. It's evidence of what he hasn't learned yet. Let him go if he won't grow. Let the absence become your boundary. Let the empty space become the room where you rebuild your standards, your nervous system, your self-respect. Because you were never meant to earn love by shrinking. You were meant to be met. And when you finally choose, that when you choose to be met rather than chased, you don't just heal, you return to yourself. That isn't bitterness. That's adulthood. That's dignity. That's the quiet, serious kind of freedom.